Let's see. Screen share. Settings. Okay. Bandwidth usage, invite people. Screen share. Okay. Actually, take a look. Okay. Good. Screen share. Screen share. Start screen share. Okay. Good. Right. That's Kaleidoscope. Fine. Okay. Okay, we're not live. Let's see. Okay, we're not live. Let's try that again. Okay. View. This is amazing. Okay. That's right. Screen share. Oh, it doesn't work. Let's try it again. Hi. Hello. Okay. Let's try one more time. View. Slide. Oh, it doesn't work. Hi. Hello. Okay. Let's make sure. Let's try one more time. Okay, should work. Okay. Okay, should work. Right. Save. Mm-hmm. All right. It is on. Group chat. Yes. Q&A. Yeah, I got it. Select. Yes, this thing is on. I wonder if we're starting now. All right. It is on. Okay. Thanks, CJ. Yes, this thing is on. I wonder if we're starting now. All right. That's good. Goodness. Great. Hi guys, my name's David, and I am in Hong Kong. And thank you for allowing me to present my PhD research project to you guys. You can see that we are engaging in a great technological experiment, a virtual presentation, and hopefully this will run smoothly. You can see the title of my presentation here. And if you go to about.me, you can also access the slides, as well as a question and answer document and other good things. So let's get started. First, let me define what an ego network is. An ego network are things related to another thing. For example, if you were to map my ego network, a network of friends, people that I know, well, I know Patrick and Matt and Glenn, but I might not know Stephen, so Stephen is not a part of my network. In the same way that we can map people's friends, we can also map the events that a person attends. So for example, at Cambridge last year, I attended such events as the Career Expo and the Writing Group, Kaleidoscope, lunchtime seminars. Since I did not attend FERSA meetings, for instance, these are not a part of my ego network. So this is a way to understand people. We can understand people in terms of the people they know, the events that they go to, amongst other things. So I want to understand the ego networks of pedagogical technologists. And pedagogical technologists, well, this is a term that I coined to describe an emergent occupational group in schools. There's very little literature on this kind of job in primary and secondary schools. In higher education, we have jobs such as learning technologists and educational technologists, which may be similar to pedagogical technologists. In primary and secondary school literature, we find such roles as ICT coordinators, who are primarily teachers, that is, they have a teaching timetable and a teaching load, but they are also responsible for technological pedagogical support for teaching through technology in schools. However, pedagogical technologists are not teachers in a traditional sense, and they are not technicians either. They are a new role, one that I believe supports primarily the pedagogical aspect of teaching through technology. So that's a part of the problem. We have an emergent occupational group, and there's not much literature on them. We have literature on teachers, we have literature on more traditional occupational groups in schools, but not this emergent occupational group. And this occupational group is emerging because technology is changing schools and schooling and curriculum. And as schools change to reflect changing society, we must prepare students for this changing society by incorporating new technologies, ways of teaching and learning into curriculum, and maybe these pedagogical technologists play an important role in doing this in schools. From my analytical framework, I use an ecological perspective, and I want to push the limits of this ecological metaphor that I use. To what extent can I understand a pedagogical technologist as a species in a school environment, a school as an ecology? Similarly, I'm using networks perspectives to understand pedagogical technologists, again, ego networks. And I'm using a very different approach. I'm using a very qualitative to quantitative approach to constructing pedagogical technologists' ego networks, while most people tend to use a quantitative to qualitative approach to construct social networks. Okay, my primary research question, at least the latest iteration, is how does a school ecology change with the presence of a pedagogical technologist? How do they co-evolve? And I have some supporting questions. What is the pyramid of number that is the food chain? What are the interactions of the PT species? What is the ecological impact of the PT species? So you can see that in these research questions, I use an ecological metaphor. I consider the network of a PT and a school's network a pyramid of number or a food chain, and I problematize the PT role as a species. So let me show you my conceptual framework and how do I view a school ecology where we see this new species or role called the pedagogical technologist. And we can understand a school in terms of organizational units, these blue mountains. We have grade levels, we have content areas, we have different administrative areas, and within these organizational areas, grade levels and content areas, we have meetings of people, and they can be informal meetings, formal meetings, they can be regular or irregular meetings. Grade level teachers meet once a week, for instance. And within these meetings that are associated with organizational units, different roles attend. Teachers attend, principals attend, technicians attend, the nurse attends, parents attend, janitors attend, students attend. So we have different roles at different meetings belong to different organizational units. And some meetings don't belong to organizational units. Some meetings can be very spontaneous and informal, water cooler stuff, for instance, or emails. And we can trace information flow, ideas between meetings. Something is mentioned in one meeting, and that is carried over to another meeting, and then another meeting, and then another meeting, and another meeting. Some ideas just get mentioned once in a meeting and never reappear again in other meetings. So that's how I view school ecology. So the theoretical framework that informs my understanding of ecology in schools is complexity theory. I'm seeing schools like basketball teams and weather systems. Unpredictable, emergent, self-organizing, and creative. We're not dealing with simple causality here. That's why I didn't pose my research question as how does a pedagogical technologist impact or change a school. No, I believe that the pedagogical technologist is changing the school while the school is changing, and also the pedagogical technologist is changing. So they're co-evolving. Wow, I'm in my third year of my PhD program, my fourth year studying pedagogical technologists. And 3 years ago, when I started data collection and analysis, I had no idea I'd end up over here. So that's the beauty of grounding data collection and analysis. I really had no idea what exactly I was looking for in studying pedagogical technologists. So I just began collecting data and collecting interesting things. And the more data I collected, the more data I implicitly analyzed, the more I was able to articulate what exactly I was analyzing. So much of my data came from unstructured ethnographic interviews and also observations. I wanted to see and hear about these ecologies and start to make sense of them. And the more I was in the ecology, the more I was able to articulate what I was actually looking for. So ultimately, I came up with an axial coding scheme where I was mapping the events. So what are the events that pedagogical technologists attend? What qualities do they have in terms of formality and frequency, for instance? what organizational units do they belong to, which school roles attend these events, who are the actual individuals at these events, and what's the foci, or what is the foci of these events? What's the purpose? And in my research, I'm determining strength of ties in these ego networks, but not direction. Okay, so this is an example of turning the qualitative into the quantitative. We have an interview, an observation, and a document, a web page. And so I notice here in this interview that this person, this teacher, this grade level teacher, I see this grade level teacher at this particular event. And the purpose of this event is digital storytelling. So I observe one of these, and then at another event that I attend, I hear one pedagogical technologist talking about this event and the focus of digital storytelling. And the pedagogical technologist also mentions this teacher's presence at this event. And at the website, we actually see a description of this kind of event. All right, so this is a list of select data that I collected that inform the ego networks. I've written several cases of PTs in schools, and this is just one. And I'm at the analysis portion, or section, or stage of my research, and I'm just learning how to analyze my data more thoroughly. And I'll get to that at the end of my presentation, some of the limits and constraints and challenges to my research, trying to actually map all of this out. This was difficult too, just trying to diagram my research protocol after I met a participant for either the purpose of an interview or event observation, or to collect a document from that person if necessary. I store everything. I take notes of observations. I transcribe and clean interviews. I wrote inductive issue statements, something akin to open coding. And then I fed that open coding and also the original notes or transcript to the participant for their checking. And then I went through en vivo coding, axial coding, and ultimately I finished collecting data. And I'm at this point of, after several years and following several technologists, which cases to actually write up and which to forget about. I haven't actually checked the reliability of my coding yet. Okay, so I'm going to present two cases today, and one is of a pedagogical technologist in a particular school ecology where this technologist role ultimately becomes extinct. That is, the individual leaves the school and the role, the actual job, is not replaced. And then I'll give you another example of a pedagogical technologist in another school. This one is a private international school in Singapore, where the technologist role emerges, an individual occupies it. Not only that, but the membership in the role increases. So they go from one technologist to two. So we see expansion of the technologist species in one case, and the extinction of a technologist species in another. And we can start to understand why by looking at ego networks, their ego networks. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about case B, about this guy I call Daniel. And now we're talking about coevolution and ecological impact. Before Daniel became the technologist in this private international school in Hong Kong, these events that he attends already existed. So these extra school events and these intra-school events existed. Then when he became the PT in this school, he created more events. And he created more events outside the school and more events inside the school. Excuse me. So now I'm showing you the information flow. These are all of the events that I identified in Daniel's data. So these are the events that he attends outside of his international school in Hong Kong. These are the events that he attends inside. And we can trace his impact by tracing the flow or the path of a pedagogical technological innovation for, in this case, digital storytelling. So one day at a class in a university where Daniel teaches, he heard about digital storytelling, a particular technique for digital storytelling, and this intrigued him. And so he brought this idea into the school, and he brought it into an afternoon activity, which is like an extracurricular activity where students from all grade levels can attend. And it's not a systematic allocation of students. It's very informal. And so he tested it there, digital storytelling. And then he also asked a biology teacher about digital storytelling, whether she would want to team teach with him to try to apply this to a Year 9 biology lesson. And so they did this over several weeks. Once a week they met to team teach. And then afterwards, there was this conference, an educational technology conference in Hong Kong, and Daniel and a ICT teacher in the school presented this case of digital storytelling from these two intra-school events at the workshop. And then in the following semester, Daniel started sharing his experience of digital storytelling in the same course, but with a different cohort. At another conference, he presented what he did with the Year 9 biology teacher, with the teacher and the students. And then ultimately, a year later, he monetized this digital storytelling by running an educational technology camp in Hong Kong. So this digital storytelling innovation with this Year 9 biology teacher did not continue formally. Daniel left the school. And then that Year 9 biology teacher asked another biology teacher if she would want to try digital storytelling in Year 8 biology. So they tried to apply it in Year 8 biology the following year. And we do not know what has happened with digital storytelling. And at the end of the year, this teacher, Year 9 biology teacher, and the students also presented to the entire school at a year-end assembly. So we can see that digital storytelling passed harmlessly in and out of the school network. And now this is an ego network in terms of the roles and the organizational units that Daniel was able to touch through this digital storytelling innovation. First, I note that the entire school, there are primary and secondary sections, and there are two distinct streams, an English language stream and then a national language and culture stream. So this is a unique feature of a private international school in Hong Kong. They can stratify themselves in this way. Notionally, Daniel is in charge of fostering pedagogical technological change in the entire school, but you see that he is not actually working with half of the school. The numbers signify strength of ties. That is, in these events that I mapped the digital storytelling flow, how often does Daniel actually interact with these people or these roles in these events as digital storytelling is flowing through and out of the school? And we see that Daniel works very closely with people outside the school, and he also works very closely with one biology teacher in the international secondary section for this innovation. Otherwise, he's working with a very ambiguous group of students in the international primary section through the after-school activities. He works closely also with the IT teacher who drops into some of these intra-school and extra-school events. But you see that his actual reach in the school through digital storytelling is very, very limited. Okay, now I'm going to show you, oh goodness, wow. All right, I'm going to make this really, really quick. So this is case F, Sam. He works in a private international school in Singapore. We can see that he attends a lot of meetings that already existed before he became the pedagogical technologist. And then when he became the pedagogical technologist in his school, he created select events. No extra school events, just inter-school events. And I'm tracing the flow of two innovations in his school. One is an iMovie innovation, and we can see that this iMovie innovation is contained within the school. Not only that, but the meetings that Sam attends are also well connected with lessons. So what happens in team time, for instance, impacts lessons, and then it also impacts team time. Okay, I'm not sure if I actually have enough time to describe these. Maybe I'll go to the next slide and you'll have a better sense of who actually attends these meetings. So we can see the ego network of Sam in his school. He's just responsible for the primary section on one campus of this private international school in Singapore. We see that he has systematic reach of teachers and students in 3 grade levels, and he also reaches the head of grade. And notionally, or actually, we can see in practice that he has regular contact and pretty even contact with the teachers in each grade level. Okay, this is another innovation. The following year, I traced the path of a learning journal innovation in this school, and we can see that in this, there are some competing events that cause problems with the flow of learning journal innovation from meeting to meeting. Because certain people and certain roles have to attend events that conflict with other events that facilitate the flow of learning journals to and from lessons. Okay. And in the second year, too, there was an additional pedagogical technologist. So now Sam is joined by an additional PT. They have greater reach in the school, greater systematic reach. They reach year 3, 4, 5, 2, 1, and reception year teachers, and they are reaching students in most grade levels regularly. All right, and to discuss a few things about pedagogical technologists through these 2 cases, when we actually talk about teaching and learning in a school and changing teaching and learning, we're actually talking about changing lessons. Lessons are the key teaching and learning event. They happen most regularly and most numerously in a school. And so that's something that really came through in my understanding and studying of Sam, that his events are very well connected with lessons. About the idea of coevolution, with a PT role, we see that in both cases, these PTs create new events. But those events don't necessarily have great impact in a school. Not only that, but the PT role alone doesn't change a school. We see that the PT must work with other people in the school, must work regularly with other people in a school, hence the title No Lone Rangers. PT is not a Lone Ranger. Something that was very, very interesting between the cases was that conflict was evident in Sam, case F. He and the other participants kept talking about conflict, conflict, and conflict. It was the only thing they really talked about, fighting. Fighting at these meetings, fighting about these innovations. Curiously, in Daniel's case in the private international school in Hong Kong, there was no mention of conflict or tension at all. And that really raised a red flag in my head. It's like, why is that the case? And I realized that Daniel's events were actually all voluntary and not compulsory. So he could just work with the people he wanted to work with. People were not obligated to attend. Whereas with Sam in his school, because the events were so systematic across grade levels and participation compulsory, well, conflict was unavoidable. So I'm starting to find that systematic, compulsory meetings and conflict are related. So is also systemic innovation. Finally, just given by the choice of cases, just having a PT role doesn't mean that even the PT role is sustainable in a school and that innovation can be sustainable in a school. Daniel's case shows us that even by creating events, these events aren't necessarily impactful, and the kinds of innovations that are introduced in a school aren't very impactful. Okay, and some challenges. I'm dealing with a lot of incomplete data. Again, I used a qualitative, quantitative approach. I didn't ultimately know that I'd end up using networks perspective in this way. And as you saw from my evaluation research table, developing standard consistent granularity, that is figuring out the timing of events, the frequency of events, when innovations are actually introduced to events and pass out of events, can be very challenging. And again, I don't actually know the complete networks of events and roles in schools. Also, the strength that I showed you of these ties is limited by the data I actually have. And that's it. Thank you very much. Okay. If there's time, I can field questions. Wow, hey. Okay. Okay. Next. Okay. Okay, I actually haven't tested the validity of my coding yet. This inter-rater reliability process has not begun. However, I do have different measures to test what exactly I'm finding and my analysis. For instance, I do a lot of participant checking, and I've fed back my results to my participants, and we've continued discussing these ideas and what I'm finding. In addition, if this is not a longitudinal study, but I still follow these technologists around in these schools. In fact, when Daniel left his school, he went to another school to be a technologist, and I see quite similar behavior in his practices in that school, he's creating events, and he's creating a lot of voluntary events. very much conflict averse. Thanks. See you guys.